Hi everyone, I'm Ellie from Ellie's Exotics, and today we are going to be rating all of my animals. Now, I'm not doing this to say that this animal is the best or this is the best. I love this one more. This is mainly just to go through all of the different species I have, see if their care or cost would suit you, and I guess kind of show the reality of owning them, because sometimes you'll watch a care guide and they'll say, well, this animal is docile and friendly and amazing, and sometimes they can be the complete opposite of that. So we're going to rate these animals using 4 different categories. The first one being handling, the next one being difficulty of setup. So what it was like to set up the enclosure, was it easy? And that will also include maintenance of the enclosure and whether or not it is hard to maintain, because I do have a lot of bioactive setups. The third topic is the cost of the animal and the setup combined. And then the fourth topic is day-to-day care and husbandry and whether that is pretty easy or quite difficult. But with reptiles, day-to-day care is generally very easy anyway. So I'm going to be rating them out of 10, and the higher the number, the better, okay? So if they get 40 out of 40, then that means that this is the easiest, best pet reptile that I have. But none of them are gonna be 40 out of 40 because I'm being realistic here. Every animal is amazing for one reason, but maybe falls behind in another reason, like cost. So let's go through it all. We're going to start out with the geckos. I have 2 gecko species. I have a Gargoyle Gecko and a Crested Gecko. So starting with my Gargoyle Gecko, her name is Honey. I have had both of my geckos since October. They came from the same breeder, and I got her because I wanted her to be an educational animal for when I used to be an animal educator in schools, etc. So how does she do with handling? Well, I would say she is about a 6 out of 10. Honey has bitten me, and she does like to poop on me, but skittish-wise, she generally kind of just sits there. In the enclosure, she can be a little bit crazy when you initially go to pick her up, but once she's out, as long as you are super respectful, you're super slow with her, she is usually very good. When it came to the educational shows, she wasn't. She hated it. So I stopped using her. Now, difficulty of setup. Her setup was pretty easy, but she does have a custom background, so I'm going to knock it down a few points and rate her about a 7 out of 10. Now, her plants were doing amazing for the longest time, and then out of nowhere, a couple of them just completely died off. I don't know if it's maybe there's not enough root space in there now because it's been set up for quite a long time. This has been set up way before I had Honey, so I'm guessing that's what it probably is. I've just got too many plants in there and they're taking up too much floor space. Next is cost. I'm giving her and her setup a 7 out of 10. Now, usually, if you're going for a Gargoyle Gecko, the most expensive thing will be the enclosure. But her enclosure was like £50 off Facebook Marketplace. Albeit, it isn't the prettiest, but it does work. I am going to change out her enclosure eventually because I absolutely can't stand how it looks now. It just doesn't look great. It could look so much better. But it was very cheap. It works. And day-to-day care, I would say they're about an 8 out of 10. Now, if an animal has a lower rating than the others, it's not because they're necessarily hard to deal with day-to-day. It's more that I just have to do more with them. Reptiles, like I said, are generally very simple and very easy on the day-to-day. I give her an 8 out of 10 because I have to go in. I'll mist once, sometimes twice a day, depending on the season. And she also needs her food bowl refilling multiple times a week, which a lot of my other animals don't need. So yeah, I give her an 8 out of 10. That brings her total to 28 out of 40. The next animal is Cheese, and Cheese is my Crested Gecko. He is still a baby / juvenile, but he is getting his big boy setup soon. So these ratings might change once he's an adult and his setup is, fully done. But let's start with handling. Cheese is a 2 out of 10. He's crazy, okay? He is absolutely crazy. I have had so many Crested Geckos over the years, and yeah, he was by far the craziest one. He is always running around, jumping around. He does not like to see me coming. He is quite nervous around me and also my partner. And if you see me looking around, it's because I'm looking at the enclosures whilst I'm talking. But yeah, he's a 2 out of 10. He's not great. But difficulty of setup, I give him a 9 out of 10. His setup is incredibly simple. He's still on paper towels because he's a baby. He's just got some fake plants, some branches, you know, some places to hide away. He's got a feeding ledge. It's very, very simple. And again, because it's summer, no heat lamp, but he does have his UVB. Cost as well, I would say 9 out of 10. I mean, I got cheese for free. Honey was, I believe, I can't remember off the top of my head, about 130, 150 pounds, something like that. So she was quite a lot, but cheese was free. Cheese was free. His enclosure was also £20 off Facebook Marketplace. His UVB was free, and all of the plants in the enclosure I already had. So yeah, very, very cost effective. Day-to-day care, he's also going to be an 8, just like Honey. He gets misted once, sometimes twice a day, and he gets food multiple times a week. So just like Honey, that brings his total to 28 out of 40. Now let's get on to the colubrids. So we're going to start out with Kiki because I've had her the longest. Kiki is my corn snake. So handling wise, Kiki gets a solid 5 out of 10 because sometimes she is an amazing, beautiful angel baby, and then sometimes she's a little bit of a pain. It really depends on the day that you get her. So she is a 5 out of 10. Difficulty of setup, I give her a 3 out of 10. Now, the enclosure itself, super easy to set up. I've done it a million times before. It's a 4x2x2 with topsoil and play sand and hides and lighting. She's also got like UVA 1 and things like that. But for some reason, I just cannot for the life of me keep plants alive in her enclosure. I want desperately to have a bioactive corn snake enclosure, and I have just not been able to make it work. So 3 out of 10. But if you didn't have a bioactive setup, then this would probably be like an 8 or a 9. And cost, she gets an 8 out of 10. She was free also, so there's that, but also her enclosures behind me, I got them for a pretty good deal. I got them from Provivs, I believe. I think that's the place, and it was before they put their prices up, so I think they were only like £100 and something each. And day-to-day care, she gets a 9 out of 10. I'd give her a 10, but she definitely looks at me with some hungry eyes when I'm cleaning her water bowl. But yeah, she gets a 9 out of 10. She's very simple to maintain. You know, it's just, like I said, cleaning the water bowl, and then once every 2 weeks she gets fed. So it's really not a lot. I'll go in and mist her every now and then as well, but the humidity is super high at the moment. So Kiki gets a 25 out of 40. The next colubrid is Toast, and he is my Mexican black king snake, or my partner's Mexican black king snake. He's still a baby, so just like Cheese, these things might change in the future, but how's he for handling? I give him a solid 7 out of 10. He's pretty good. If I was rating him when we first got him, I would have been like 10 out of 10. He's amazing, but he has started to do the typical king snake thing where he kind of opens his mouth and then tries to have a taste of your fingers. So he's not a 10 out of 10 anymore, but he's still very good, and he will literally just sit in your hands. For difficulty of setup, he gets an 8 out of 10. He's had a couple of plants that have died, but other than that, his setup is doing pretty well, and it was very easy to put together because he's only in a 45 by 45 enclosure, since he is literally this big. As for cost, I give him and his setup a 6 out of 10. He was about £250, which I believe is quite standard for a Mexican black king snake. But you know, some people might say that that is quite expensive. It is a lot of money, but his setup wasn't. I already had his enclosure, I already had the substrate ready to go. All I really needed to do was buy an extra UVB unit, an extra heat bulb and a thermostat, and go to B&Q and buy some plants. So yeah, he was pretty good. And as for day-to-day care, a lot of the snakes are gonna get a 9 out of 10. A bit like Kiki, he does like to come out and have a sniff of your fingers sometimes, and he has a very strong food response, just like Kiki. If you want to see any of my animals eating, that's what last week's video was all about. But yeah, Toast gets a 30 out of 40, which I think is pretty good. Now let's move on to the boas, and we'll start with the one that I've had the longest, which is Marmite. I've had him for a couple of years now. Marmite is my Kenyan Sand Boa. And as for handling, I give him a 9 out of 10. I don't give him a 10 out of 10 because handling small snakes, you know, you do have to be quite careful with them. They aren't really like a sit and chill with you snake because you have to really be careful with them. They're quite fragile. But once he's out, he literally just sits there, and getting him out is pretty easy once I've found him when I'm digging through the dirt. Difficulty of setup, 8 out of 10. Super easy, really easy to maintain, but his isn't bioactive, so every few months I take out all of the substrate and give him brand new substrate. As for cost, he gets a 9 out of 10. Small animal means smaller enclosure, which means it costs less. But I'm pretty sure his enclosure I got secondhand as well for pretty cheap off Facebook Marketplace. And it was quite a long time ago, so I can't remember exactly how much he cost, but I'm pretty sure he was about £40, which is pretty good for a Kenyan Sand Boa. As for day-to-day care, he only gets a 4 out of 10. And that's not because I have to do loads with him, but it's because of his feeding habits. So whenever I am feeding on a Friday, it's hit or miss whether he's actually out. He has gotten into a routine now, so he knows on a Friday that food is coming, and that if he doesn't come out on a Friday, then he's not getting fed. I might try again on a Saturday or a Sunday if he hasn't eaten in a long time. But the main thing with Kenyan Sand Boas is that they are just so shy sometimes that they don't want to come out of the substrate to eat. And when you feed them in a separate box, again, they're so shy that they don't want to eat in the separate container. But other than that, his care is very, very simple. He gets a 30 out of 40. The next boa is Chai, and Chai is a Dumeril's boa. So very different from a Kenyan Sand Boa. Chai is my newest addition. Because of that, her handling score is obviously going to be a bit lower. She's still getting used to us. We got her in about April, I believe, or maybe it was March. So for the first 6 months, they're just settling in really, and her handling score is a 6 out of 10. She did try to bite the vet once, but she hasn't struck at us. It's more that she's very flighty. She really reminds me of Kiki, to be honest. But she is better than Kiki when she is out. Kiki will still kind of flail around, but Chai, once she's out and she realizes what's going on, she calms right down and she's fine. As for difficulty of setup, she gets an 8 out of 10. She also has like a custom background and she's got all live plants and stuff like that. And I've done a whole video on that as well. But I rate her enclosure quite highly because she's quite an arid species. She doesn't really like high humidity, so I don't have to miss the plants as often, and the plants do very well just kind of on their own. As for cost, her and Dumeril's boas in general, I do give her a 5 out of 10. Chai I got for an amazing price, but generally you're looking at about £400 for a Dumeril's boa in the UK. Chai was $250, so like I said, she was very good, but maybe too good to be true because she did actually end up having a heart deformity, but she will live a completely fine, happy life with it. And her setup is bigger than the others. It's the biggest one in this room, so yeah, it's going to be more expensive than the others too. And when she is older, she will need an enclosure that is even bigger than that one, maybe even double the size. So yeah, 5 out of 10 for cost. But for day-to-day care, she gets a 9 out of 10. just like all the other snakes. That brings Chai's total to 28 out of 40. Next, we have my only python at the moment, and that is Bicky, my Woma Python. Now, I've saved the best till last because Bicky, he's my baby boy. You know, I have fallen in love with Woma Pythons. He has literally, he's just amazing. He's amazing. He has changed my whole perspective on snakes. I have gained this whole new love for Woma Pythons because of him. So, he has a pretty high score. As for handling, he gets a 9 out of 10. Would have been 10 out of 10, but a bit like the king snake, he has only one time tried to open his mouth and have a nibble, but he didn't actually end up biting, and he never did it again. So, he's fine. But he's so easy to handle. I mean, when I got him, it wasn't the case. He, you know, was striking at me and whatever, but now he's the best snake to handle in the reptile room. He is amazing. As for difficulty of setup, his is very similar to Chai's sort of vibe, but I've decorated it differently so it looks more like his natural habitat. But he gets an 8 out of 10. His setup is doing pretty well. He's had a couple of plants that haven't done great, but he still has all of his original plants, so that is good. As for cost, he gets a 7 out of 10. He was the same price as my Mexican black king snake. He was, I believe, about £250, but not too bad. Really not too bad. I think for a species that isn't as commonly seen as a Woma Python, I don't think £250 is that bad. But he's in a 4x2x2 and eventually he'll need like a 6x2x2. So the enclosures can be quite expensive. And day-to-day care, like most of the others, he gets a 9 out of 10. The only reason why he doesn't get a 10 is because when we are feeding him, sometimes he does try to eat the tongs, which can make my life a little bit difficult. So overall, Bicky gets a 33 out of 40 and he is the highest rated reptile in the reptile room. Now, just because he has a higher number than the others doesn't mean that he makes a better pet for you than he does for me. He just so happened to score higher in majority of the categories than some of the other animals. But before we go, I am also going to include Big Mac, which is my frog. I know he's not a reptile, but he's my only amphibian, so I had to include him. I can't leave him out, because if I do end up doing this video with tarantulas or my inverts, then he won't be included in that either. So let's include Big Mac and let him be the star of the show at the end of the video. As for handling, he gets a 1 out of 10. So he's a Pacman Frog, so we're not supposed to handle him anyway. But even if I did, this boy would probably take off all of my fingers and then lick his lips afterwards. Difficulty of setup, he gets a 7 out of 10. Pretty easy to set up, you know, it's just a few plants, but I will say that sometimes he likes to trample on those plants. As for cost, he gets a solid 8 out of 10. He himself is quite a fancy coloration, if you will, so for £40 I don't think that's too bad. His enclosure was off Facebook Marketplace and some of the things in his enclosure were sent to me for free as well. And his day-to-day care, he gets a 7 out of 10. It's only a little bit lower than the others just because he does need a lot of misting, like compared to the geckos it's even more than that. His humidity needs to stay pretty high. And he can also be a bit crazy when we feed him. So overall, Big Mac gets a 23 out of 40. Okay, and that is the end of this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please make sure you do subscribe if you haven't already. I would love to see you around here more. I post weekly and I'm very consistent with my uploads, so you don't want to miss the next one. Let me know down in the comments if you would like to see a tarantula or invert version of this video, and I will see you all later. Bye bye!